Welcome to part 2 of this 2-part series. In part 1, we started the pre-season service on this 1961 BSA Rocket Gold Star. Today in part 2, we'll work alongside Dave to get the bike back together. Then we'll take it out for a ride to warm up the engine so we can change the engine oil and complete the service. Let's get started.
Right, okay, so ready to put the rocker box back on. We covered this up last week. I did put the comb there, so we take the comb out of the way. We're just going to clean round here, a little bit of brake cleaner on a bit of paper, and just go around and mop up and just make sure you haven't got any oil contamination or silicone bead left on here. We want this completely smooth. Okay, what we got in here, we've got some oil residue that's run down. The reason I won't leave it there, I'll put some brake cleaner on and blow it out, is because it will burn on, it will stick, and you get that brown crud and you get dust sticking to it as well. And it will stop the cooling a little bit, and it's messy, you don't want to do that because you want to keep your head nice and clean. So we can give this a good squirt over. If we keep the airline deep down in the fins, it won't blow into the engine as such. Okay, I have taken the tubes out because as we was blowing around, a few bits did get onto the pushrod tube, so I don't want to leave that like that. Not a bad idea, just to make sure that the ends are okay. So this one really is a little bit pitted. That end's good, but there's a bit of pitting around there. I will have to replace that sometime. Doesn't matter which way they go in, both the same, both ends. That one in. Now they're back in their cups. Just make sure that they're all located. So we just make sure all the push rods go up and down. So it's that one gone, that front one's gone, that back one's gone. There's now just this front one's got to move. Okay, and then try and get them so they're all in a down position as much as possible. So that one's up, that one's down. Just get them so there is a point where they're virtually all down. Just makes it a little bit easier when we put the rocker box back on. Before you glue your gaskets down, always make sure they're ran the right way, because you don't want to fiddle around afterwards when you've got the sealer on the head and you're trying to get the gasket on. This one has got the cutaway at this side, and you'll see that head has got this shape, takes that form. Now on the other one, because they make two gaskets exactly the same, you have to have it upside down. So it's got the right in the gasket towards you, because that's then got the cutaway that side. Because they are really the same gasket. Don't worry about that, it's fine. The gasket doesn't matter if it's upside down or not. Okay, with replacement gaskets, it's always a good idea to make sure all the holes line up and the gasket actually covers up on the surface area. This is the thing with aftermarket gaskets, they don't always give a good coverage. This is why I say any movement, you can have trouble. Right, well seal. If you've not seen me use it before, I use it because it's an old product and it goes on very runny and it cures off quite tacky. It doesn't go hard. You want to apply it really with a mascara brush. You don't need too much of it, but you need it nice and clean first. So make sure, like say, with a bit of paper, a bit of brake cleaner, and just clean up. And we just spread that well around. That will start to cure, so we just let it air dry before we put the gasket on there for just a couple of minutes really. So by the time you've done all three areas here that have got to be covered, it'll be time to put the gasket on. If I had the time, had this head off, I would make sure this was put on the block, because you can see this damage here. It's quite a big dink here. Now it doesn't help a gasket, because if you look, that is an area which is lower there, and that gasket really it's not got any support there at all. And that's why we need that rocker box to be quite smooth, and we need a bit of a well seal here to actually do its job and hold the gasket down, because it is half the thickness of flat surface area. That has gotten quite a nasty dink. But as it's my bike, the head's not coming off. That'll be okay. Just going to show you the comb. It just holds the push rods in the right position, so when we put the rocker box on, it all should line up. Now the reason we don't use any sealant on top of the gasket is because we've got our fingers on the top here, we've got the comb on the top, and it all gets a bit messy. If you put your plug in, or plugs in really, stops any debris, it will support the comb a little bit on this side. But it is a little bit of a fiddle, and your gasket will move about a little bit, and you can reposition it before, obviously, you put your bolts through. When you're winding these studs back into the head, into the rocker box itself, you've got your top nut here, and it's up against the bottom nut. You just need to just pull it. You're just watching, and you don't need to put any raw torque on there, because it's just setting it back into the actual rocker box. If you start pulling on that thread, you're going to chase it out. You're not going to do any good. That's enough, because when you bolt that all down, it's going to pull on that thread anyway. You just make sure that's gone to the bottom of the thread and it's secure. Then just slacken off your two nuts. Now install your head. Hang on to your comb. Don't let the comb go, because it has the tubes in the right position. Put your head through. Now, a little bit fiddly. We've got to get that over the top. Oh, now I've got to get this so I can come now forward. I'm just a little bit caught on the valve spring, so I'm going to have to go a little bit sideways here and get that over. Right, I've now need to get my comb back, make sure my tubes are positioned in my comb properly before I go any further. One's come out, so I'm going to have to carefully move that one back. Just hold a finger underneath there, get your screwdriver, bring him over. Right, I think we're there. The awkward bit is just making sure the comb doesn't move and the push rods line up with the rockers. Thing we've got to do now is just going to have a look with a torch, make sure they've gone in, the actual end of the push rod's gone into the rocker cup. We check all four. We make sure the gasket's not moved too much. It has moved out a little bit, but we can slide that along. We're going to take the comb out once we know we're in place. What I'm going to do, we've got 4 head bolts now. I'm carefully going to take the other plug out and just turn the engine a little bit to make sure that the valves are actually going up and down. I'm sure in the cup's okay, but just to make sure, rather than me pull down, put all the bolts back in underneath, start to tighten things up. If it's slightly wrong now, I've only got 4 bolts in, and this has got enough spread now of security on the top of the rocker box. It won't do any damage. Yeah, all 4 valves are going up and down properly, so everything now is where it should be. So here we have our nut with our washer, a little bit of grease, hold it in place. We just go diagonally across on these. So we've got the rocker box pulled down now. You notice I haven't used the torque wrench. You really can't, because the back bolts are a little bit difficult to get to, but the front ones especially, because in between the fins. You don't want to over tighten this rocker box. If you've got, like I say, new gasket on there with well seal done properly like that, you just nip it down. We've now got the rocker feed to put back on. Don't over tighten these because they're hollow, because you can shear those off quite easily. And you find sometimes with new ones, you can put them on, tighten and nip them up. When the engine's been run a few times, they do slacken off a bit, so you need to recheck them. We're just putting in the top studs. We had these taken out to get the rocker box back on. We put 2 nuts on, tighten those down. But notice, got old gaskets on here. They're going to stay on there. They're quite serviceable. Okay, to set the clearances, we're going to make sure that the right hand inlet valve is open. Then we can check then the left hand inlet valve. So just turn him over on the kickstart, the plug's out. Get that rocker down on this right hand side. right to the bottom, and now we can set this clearance up. Okay, so finger tight, these are extended nuts. We just start up and down, side to side. Just going to find where they start to nip, like there. Don't over tighten these, don't pull too hard on these studs, because you find a lot of old rocker boxes, the studs, the threads have been pulled out. What we need to do now, because it's been standing through the winter, is it has wet sumped a little bit, so we're just going to drain it off. There's a plate on the bottom which has got a magnet drain screw in it. So take that out and drain the oil off, and also it shows us any debris in the oil, it will stick to the magnet. Now this will show you what the engine's like. Don't be alarmed, we always get a certain amount of, there will be metallic oil there, but that was particles, that would be a worry. But that will pick up. They are a good idea having this. Like wet sumping. This engine is what we call dry sump lubrication. So it has a separate oil tank. It's when the oil goes through the oil pump, and what happens is over a period of time, when the engine is not moving, the gears should hold the oil back. The oil will actually get the other side of the gears and start leaking down into the crankcase, where we have that thing called a scavenger, which we've spoken about before. It sucks the oil back. So it will start to discharge, will drain down the oil from the oil tank into the bottom of the engine. You don't want to start it or try and start it, because if the crankcase is full of oil, what will happen is it will just push the oil out the engine breather. There'd be so much compression in the engine, and it will have to move that oil somewhere, because you've got so much down the bottom there. The scavenger can't cope with it, so it just pushes it all out the breather. So always just drain that down. As I said before, what you always do in the winter is leave it on compression. When the con rods are at the top, there's less chance of the oil getting down to the crank and going up and through the journals. If the crank is down, it's all downhill, and there's more chance of it starting to float and carrying on flowing. These engines don't suffer that badly, but that's a long time since October last year, and it's not had too much drop down the bottom, but I'm just going to drop it down anyway, and we'll put it back in the tank, and yeah, we'll go from there. Someone asked how often I change the oil on my bikes. Because I don't ride these bikes particularly often, I probably only do a couple of thousand miles a year. So that oil change should be done once a year to start the season. Because oil's cheap really, it's the lifeblood of an engine. I'd rather do frequent changes. But I mean, this oil is clean, but we are going to change it today. It had picked up a little bit of, not paste, but you can see it's, you know, metallicness in the oil, which you get when you've got a magnet. The idea is to take this out on the road, get it nice and warm, bring it back and give it a good oil change. Ready to start the bike up. She's not been run since last year. So just turn it over a few times. It's quite high compression, this one. Okay, we're ready to tickle the carb. Advance the retard. Let's bring that back a little bit. Take the cap off once you start the engine after a while, because you want to make sure you've got a good return. Because bike's been standing, we know we drained it off the crankcase, but just make sure it's coming back on the return side. Okay, I've just taken the tank filter out. I've washed it out in the kerosene. We're ready to go. We don't need to take everything out of this because the oil wasn't bad. It's just now ready for new oil to start the season. So now we can fill up with fresh oil. So we use a straight 50, which really is recommended on these older engines. It's a good oil to use in the summertime. If you were riding these for the winter, as I said before to you, use a 40 grade. But 50 is good for summer. It's what we tend to use on most of Parallel Twins, really. And the singles, Gold Star. It's less likely to go through the pump than a 2050 oil. It's slightly thicker. I mean, go through the pump as wet sumping. Okay, managed to fill the oil tank up. Want to be very careful not to overfill, because when the oil returns back to the tank, if there isn't a cavity there, it will start to push it out the breather. It will start to froth up probably in the top here. And in the top of the tank there is a breather. And what would happen is it would start chucking oil out there. Good chance it'd go down to your back tyre. So you always want that gap. So if that's too full, you won't see that tube chucking the oil back into the tank because it'd be higher than that level. Okay, so we're just topping up the gearbox with 90 oil using this pump bottle, and that would just push oil up the tube into the gearbox, and you'll see oil coming out the level plug at the back. They always lose a little bit of oil out in the main shaft seal, so you need to keep your eye on your gearbox levels because they will drop a little bit. But I have put probably about 1/4 pint in there. Yeah, just do them up tight. Don't need to over tighten them. As long as you've got a good blade screwdriver, it's just good hand pressure. This bottom bolt here is a level plug at the bottom of the tube. So we take this out, there's got a fibre washer on the top. We should just get a dribble or so of oil, hopefully. Okay, it's a little bit overfilled, tiny bit, which I don't really mind because it's the primary chain case, so I'm probably going to put that plug back in because a little bit of oil in there, a bit more than you need, is not a bad thing. It's not far over, but you need the oil for your chain, and it throws it around the clutch. Your primary chain, just check it. I know this one's okay. You need to turn the engine over a few times and feel it in different positions, but if I lift it with a screwdriver, you might see with a light how much sort of play you want. Now if I was to take the plugs over it out and kick it over it, it might go slightly slacker than that in one place, but that's the overall tension you want. Yeah, this chain adjustment here, you never want that too tight, especially on a pre-unit, because the whole thing moves, the gearbox is independent from the engine. You want that free play. And I'm not going to do it now, but you need to, with the plugs out, turn the engine over and just check it 2 or 3 places on a rotation of the engine. So you move the chain around the sprocket, just make sure there's no real tight spots. This one's okay, but I like to have a little bit of movement there. You keep your eye on that, you know, and if you over adjust the chain, it will wear quickly, it'll wear the sprockets, it'll load up the front crankshaft bearing, it'll load up the clutch bearing too in the gearbox. Everything will get loaded and you'll get premature wear, but just make sure there's that clearance. It's so important to not let things be like piano tight, you know, they need that free play. And, you know, like drive chain, your rear chain. If you load it up, it won't last 5 minutes. Okay, if your primary chain is in need of adjustment, we have 2 points here. This one is the main adjuster bolt and there's the one underneath. You slacken the one underneath first, then you slacken this one off, and you can adjust the gearbox on this adjuster rod. This will give you either forwards or backwards movement. We can pull this up and it would move the gearbox that way or that way. Then you lock up your 2 main bolts, top and bottom, and that's how we do it. If your gearbox sprocket needs adjusting, the chain needs adjusting I should say, just make sure you've got enough slack on your chain, on your back wheel chain first, because you're going to be moving this gearbox. Depends. If that needs to be slackened off, that means the back wheel main chain will tighten up because you're going to take this gearbox forward a little bit. So you have to know where you are. Just going to check the rear chain. You want that sort of movement. And what we do, we roll the bike forwards or backwards and we just check it again. About there. That's me sitting on the bike. You need that movement in the chain. So never run it taut. If it's taut, it will, like I say, it will load up those bearings and it will wear that chain out quickly. And if you ride a pillion, you see, your suspension will depress slightly more. The last thing we need to do is just start the bike up, check the oil return, because if you just change the oil, make sure it's returning okay, just the procedure you normally do. So we've done all our checks today. We've done our gaskets and replaced those and set our tappets up and went through all the oil changing and the level checking. Now, we've been out on the road with the bike, she's fine, it's my bike, and the carburetion's fine, you don't need to fiddle with things. I'm a big believer in don't overdo things. You know, if it's running right, you've got a spark, don't fiddle around with your points. I think you can overdo things sometimes. Carburetion's fine, she runs really well, starts well, and tyres are done now. It's really to just enjoy, really, you know. Get out there on the road and ride it.